eat poop? Beep, beep, boop. Do you eat poop? Beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop. Hey, hi, Hetty, hello. Gandalf and the panda here for the pajama party. Beep, boop. I'm a robot, in case you haven't noticed. I also have gotten a lot done on my diamond art painting. And it's beautiful. It's glorious. It's actually almost done. Bleep, bleep, boop. Bleep, bleep, bloop. Alright, so we're gonna do Appalachian horror stories. This one, I believe it starts out about SWs. I don't know how much you guys know about the Appalachian Trail, but the Appalachian Trail is steeped in history and paranormal stuff. Like, there's been so many documentations of cryptids, paranormal events, and various mythic creatures spotted along the Appalachian Trail. And like I said, it's steeped in paranormal history. So let's go.
What would you do if you heard your own voice calling for help from somewhere deep in the woods, but you were standing completely alone?
Here's what I got so far.
Hiking in the Smokies and suddenly questioning if every step is being orchestrated by something hidden, watching,
looking
and whispering
good
just for you. My name is Archer, and I'm a landscape photographer based out of Gatlinburg, Tennessee. I've been hiking the Smoky Mountains for 12 years, documenting every season, every trail, every hidden corner that most tourists never see. I know these mountains like I know my own reflection. The trails, the elevation changes, the wildlife patterns, the weather shifts. All of it is second nature to me. I've spent countless nights alone in these woods, and I've never felt afraid. Not once. Not until last October, when the mountains taught me that familiarity breeds a dangerous kind of confidence. It was a Saturday afternoon, perfect hiking weather. The fall colors were at peak brilliance, and I planned a solo trek along the Alum Cave Trail to catch sunset from a spot I'd been scouting for months. It was about half a mile off the main trail, nothing too extreme, but remote enough that I'd have the view entirely to myself. I left my truck at the trailhead around 3:30 in the afternoon, giving myself plenty of daylight to get there, set up my equipment, capture the shots I wanted, and return before full darkness set in. The hike out was flawless. The weather held steady. The light was magnificent, and by 5:15 I was positioned at my chosen vantage point, with my tripod set up and my camera ready. For the next 90 minutes, I shot frame after frame of the valley below, as the sun painted the ridgelines in shades of amber and crimson. It's moments like those that remind me why I do this work, why I'm willing to carry 40 pounds of gear into remote locations for a handful of perfect images. By 6:45, I was packed up and ready to head back. I had 2 high-powered flashlights, a headlamp with fresh batteries, my GPS unit, and enough experience to navigate these woods blindfolded if necessary. The hike back to the main trail should have taken 40 minutes, maybe 50 in the dark. I'd be at my truck by 8 at the latest, home by 9, uploading photos before bed. But 8 minutes into my return hike, everything changed. Archer. I stopped mid-step, my boot hovering above a cluster of exposed roots. The voice had come from my left, maybe 20 or 30 yards into the trees. It was clear, distinct, and unmistakably calling my name. My first reaction was confusion rather than fear. Another hiker, maybe. Someone who recognized me from town or had seen my name on my truck's bumper sticker. "Hello?" I called back, sweeping my headlamp across the darkening forest. The beam cut through the shadows, illuminating tree trunks and undergrowth, but no person, no movement, nothing. I waited, listening. The forest was quiet except for the usual evening sounds, wind through the leaves, the distant murmur of water over rocks, the occasional rustle of small animals in the underbrush. No response to my call, no explanation for the voice. I shook it off. Sound travels strangely in mountains. Echoes, wind patterns, the way valleys and ridges channel noise. It can all create auditory illusions. I probably heard another hiker on the main trail below, their voice carried upward by a quirk of geography and timing. It happened. I kept walking, but slower now, more aware of my surroundings. 5 minutes passed. Then I heard it again. "Archer, wait." This time the voice came from behind me, back toward the direction I'd just come from. I spun around fast enough to make my pack swing, my headlamp beam dancing across the trees. Still nothing. Still no one. But this time, something about the voice registered in a way it hadn't before. The tone, the inflection, the slight rasp at the end of my name. It all sounded familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. It sounded like me. Ain't similar, not reminiscent. It sounded exactly like my own voice. "This isn't funny," I shouted into the darkness, trying to inject anger into my words to mask the fear that was starting to creep in. "I don't know what kind of game this is, but I'm not playing." Silence. Complete, oppressive silence. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. I checked my GPS. I was still on course, still heading in the right direction toward the main trail. The logical part of my brain said to keep moving, to get back to civilization, to process this weirdness from somewhere safe and well lit. But my hands were shaking as I gripped the GPS device, and a cold knot had formed in my stomach. I forced myself forward. 15 more minutes to the trail. 45 minutes after that to the parking area. I could do this. I'd hiked in worse conditions in more remote locations. This was just my mind playing tricks, my imagination running wild in the dark. Nothing more. But then the voices multiplied. "Archer, over here. Archer, I'm lost. Archer, help me. Archer, please." They came from every direction simultaneously. Left, right, ahead, behind, above. All of them my voice. All of them saying different things. Some sounded curious, like I was calling to myself to get my own attention. Others sounded panicked, desperate, terrified. One of them was crying. Somewhere in the darkness surrounding me, I could hear my own voice sobbing. And I was standing completely silent, with my mouth clamped shut. My walk became a jog, then a run. I know better. Every experienced hiker knows better. Running off trail in mountain terrain at night is one of the fastest ways to get yourself killed. Exposed roots, hidden rocks, sudden drop-offs, uneven ground. All of it becomes a death trap when you can't see clearly and you're moving too fast to react. But rationality had abandoned me. All I could think about was getting away from those voices, from the sound of my own terror, being played back to me.
Yeah, probably not a great idea. I don't know. I would have probably fallen over with a cardiac, because no, no, thank you. If something using my voice starts talking to me, I'm getting the fuck out of there. I don't care if I have to run through walls. I don't care if I have to just dematerialize and turn to vapor. I don't care. I'm getting out of there. I am tiny and edible. I am not sticking around for that.
From the shadows, I crashed through undergrowth, vaulted over fallen logs, ducked under low-hanging branches. My headlamp beam bounced wildly with each step, giving me only fractured glimpses of the terrain ahead. My lungs burned, my legs screamed. The straps of my pack dug into my shoulders as the weight of my equipment slammed against my back with each stride. And the voices kept pace. Archer, you're running the wrong way. Archer, stop. Archer, it's right behind you. Archer, don't look back. That last one froze something inside me. Don't look back. Why would I say that to myself? What was behind me that I shouldn't see? Every instinct I had screamed at me to keep my eyes forward, to not acknowledge whatever was following me through these woods, wearing my voice like a mask. Then I saw the tree. It was a massive oak with a lightning scar running down its entire trunk. The bark split open to reveal pale wood beneath. I'd photographed this tree dozens of times. I knew exactly where I was, maybe 8 minutes from where I'd left the main trail. Relief flooded through me despite the voices that continued calling my name from the darkness. I pushed harder, found energy reserves I didn't know existed, and burst through a final section of dense brush onto the packed dirt of the Alum Cave Trail. The moment my boots hit that official trail, the voices stopped. All of them. Instantly. Like someone had cut a power cord. I stood there, doubled over, hands on my knees, gasping for air. My headlamp illuminated familiar trail markers. This was real. This was the actual trail. I checked my GPS to confirm. Yes, I was exactly where I needed to be. I didn't run this time. I walked, but fast, my eyes locked on the trail ahead. I didn't look into the trees. I didn't look behind me. I counted my steps to keep my mind occupied, to give myself something to focus on, besides the overwhelming urge to sprint. At step 412, I heard it one final time. Archer. A whisper, right next to my ear. So close I felt breath on my neck, warm and humid and wrong. I didn't stop. I didn't turn. I didn't acknowledge it. I just kept walking, counting steps, focusing on the simple mechanical process of putting one foot in front of the other. For 43 minutes, I walked with something breathing next to my ear, whispering my name over and over in my own voice. And I pretended with every fiber of my being that it wasn't there. When I reached the parking area, my truck sat alone under the dim security light. The moment I stepped from trail to pavement, the presence vanished. I drove home in complete silence, my hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, taking every turn too carefully, checking my rearview mirror too often. I didn't report what happened. How could I? What would I tell the park rangers? That I heard voices in the woods? That they sounded like me? I'd sound insane, or at best like someone who'd gotten spooked by natural acoustics and an overactive imagination. But 3 weeks later, I was in a local outdoor gear shop when I overheard 2 rangers talking near the counter. They were discussing a missing hiker, last seen on the Alum Cave Trail 5 days earlier. His family had received a strange emergency call from his phone before it died. The rangers were reviewing the audio, trying to determine his location based on background sounds. When they played it, I dropped the hiking boots I'd been holding. The voice on that recording, calling for help, giving a desperate description of being lost and disoriented, wasn't the missing hiker's voice. It was mine. They never found him. Search teams combed that area for 2 weeks before the operation was called off. And I haven't been back to the Smoky Mountains since. My photography business has suffered. People ask why I don't shoot the fall colors anymore, why I've switched to coastal landscapes and urban architecture. I don't tell them the truth. I don't tell them that some mountains remember you, that some places in the woods learn your voice, your name, your fears. And once they have those things, they use them to call others deeper into the darkness, using you as bait even when you're miles away, safe in your bed, trying to forget the sound of your own voice, crying for help from somewhere you'll never return to. Imagine finding shelter from a blizzard, only to realize the cabin itself is more dangerous than the storm outside. What would you do if the walls started freezing from the inside out, and something was using the ice to communicate with you? My name is Winter, and yes, I'm fully aware of the irony. A woman named Winter nearly freezing to death in the Blue Ridge Mountains makes for a story that sounds too convenient to be true. But I promise you, every word of what I'm about to tell you is exactly what happened in February of last year. I'm a long-distance backpacker, the kind who thrives on solo treks through challenging terrain in harsh conditions. I've camped in sub-zero temperatures across 3 continents. I've survived whiteout conditions in Iceland, ice storms in the Canadian Rockies, and blizzards in the Cascades. The Blue Ridge Mountains in February should have been challenging, but well within my capabilities. I planned a 5-day winter backpacking route through a remote section of the George Washington National Forest. The weather forecast showed a cold front moving in, but nothing I hadn't handled before. Daytime highs in the low 20s, nighttime lows around 5 degrees, possible snow accumulation of 3 to 6 inches. I packed accordingly. 4-season tent, sleeping bag rated to -20. Backup everything, emergency beacon, satellite communicator. I filed my route plan with the ranger station and set out on a Tuesday morning with clear skies and perfect visibility. The first 2 days were exactly what I'd hoped for. Pristine snow-covered trails, stunning winter landscapes, and the profound silence that only comes from being truly alone in the wilderness during winter. Most people avoid winter backpacking specifically because of that isolation, but for me, it's the whole point. No crowds, no noise, just you in the mountains and the raw elements. On the 3rd night, everything changed. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning to a sound I'd never heard before. My tent poles creaking under extreme stress. The walls were pressing inward, weighted down by rapidly accumulating snow. The wind had gone from the gentle breeze I'd fallen asleep to a howling monster that sounded like it was trying to rip my tent from its stakes. I checked my weather radio. Static. I checked my satellite communicator. No signal. I checked my thermometer. The temperature had dropped 40 degrees in less than 6 hours. This wasn't the forecasted cold front. This was something else entirely. Something that had appeared without warning and was intensifying by the minute. I made the decision every experienced winter backpacker dreads, but knows they might have to make someday. I had to abort the trek and get to lower elevation before conditions became completely unsurvivable. I packed up in near whiteout conditions, my fingers going numb despite 2 layers of gloves. Visibility was down to maybe 10 feet. The wind chill had to be pushing, -30 or worse. According to my map, there was a fire road about 8 miles to the east that would lead me down to a county highway. 8 miles, in a blizzard, with wind that wanted to knock me off my feet every 3rd step. I'd covered maybe 3 miles by noon, moving at a crawl, burning through calories at an unsustainable rate. My water had frozen solid in my pack despite the insulation. My face mask was coated in ice from my own breath. Every exposed inch of skin felt like it was being stabbed with frozen needles. I knew I was in trouble. Real trouble. The kind that gets people killed in the mountains every winter despite their experience and preparation. That's when I saw it through the snow. A small cabin with a stone chimney and a covered porch. It wasn't on my map. It wasn't marked on any trail guide I'd studied. But it was there, solid and real, and it represented shelter. I didn't hesitate. I fought my way through the drifts and practically fell onto the porch, reaching for the door handle with hands that could barely grip anything anymore. The door wasn't locked. It swung inward easily, and I stumbled inside, slamming it shut against the wind behind me. For maybe 10 seconds, I just stood there in the darkness, breathing hard, feeling the relief of being out of that wind. Then my eyes adjusted, and I noticed something that should have sent me right back out into the storm. It was colder inside the cabin than it had been outside. Not slightly colder, dramatically colder. My breath formed thick, heavy clouds in the air. Every surface was covered in a thin layer of frost. The walls, the floor, the single wooden table in the center of the room. The windows were coated in ice on the inside, not the outside. There was an old iron bed frame in one corner, stripped of any mattress or bedding. A fireplace dominated one wall, but it looked like it hadn't been used in decades. Every survival instinct I'd honed.
I mean, if you're like a survivalist and you're not listening to your instincts, what good are they? I'm just asking. Like, if every instinct you have is telling you this is a bad situation, why are you still there exactly? Like, I feel like if every instinct you have is telling you to leave, you should probably leave. Just saying. Like, if a place is frozen from the inside out, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of warmth there. Just saying. And your name is Winter. Oh, the irony. I cannot believe how much I've gotten done on this one so far. Like, I'm very close to being done.
For years of backcountry experience, was screaming that something was fundamentally wrong with this place. But the storm outside was screaming louder. I dropped my pack, pulled out my sleeping bag, and set up my camping stove to make hot water. I needed to warm up from the inside, get calories into my system, and reassess my options. That's when I noticed the frost patterns on the walls weren't random. They formed words. I had to angle my headlamp just right to see them clearly, but once I did, I couldn't look away. Deliberate letters spelled out in thick frost across every wall of the cabin. Stay, don't leave it, wants you outside. My hands froze on my stove controls. I stood slowly, approaching the nearest wall, reaching out to touch the frosted letters. The moment my glove made contact, the temperature dropped even further. My digital thermometer read negative 12 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside a structure. That was physically impossible. I turned back toward the door, ready to take my chances with the blizzard, but I stopped, dead. The door was covered in solid ice, not frost, but actual ice at least 3 inches thick, coating the entire door and spreading across the frame. I'd been inside for maybe 20 minutes. There was no water source, no explanation for how ice could form that fast and that thick. I grabbed my ice axe and swung at the frozen door. The impact barely left a scratch. I swung again, harder, and managed to chip off a piece the size of a quarter. At this rate, it would take hours to break through, and I could feel the temperature still dropping, my thermometer now reading negative 18. I spun around, scanning for another exit. 2 windows, one on the east wall, one on the west. I moved to the eastern window and cleared the interior frost with my axe handle. Through the glass, I could see the storm still raging. But I could also see something else that made my blood run colder than the air around me. Dark shapes stood motionless in the snow about 30 feet from the cabin. There were 3 of them. They weren't moving, weren't being buffeted by the wind that was strong enough to bend trees. They were just standing there, facing the cabin, facing me, and even through the snow and limited visibility, I could see enough to know they weren't human. Too tall, arms too long, heads tilted at angles that no living person could sustain. I backed away and checked the western window. 2 more shapes, same impossible stillness, same wrong proportions. The frost on the walls began to change. New words formed, spreading across the surface like invisible fingers were writing them in real time. They've been waiting storm, brings them cabin, keeps them out. I watched in numb horror as more text appeared. But cabin needs. Cold, cold keeps them away, you brought heat. I looked at my camping stove, still running, pumping warm air into the space. I looked at my body, radiating heat, fighting against the cold with every breath. And I understood something terrible. The cabin wasn't trying to trap me. It was trying to protect me. But my presence, my warmth, my very existence as a living person generating heat was weakening whatever barrier kept those things outside from getting in. I made a decision that went against every survival principle I'd ever learned. I turned off my stove. I unzipped my sleeping bag and spread it flat, eliminating its insulation. I removed my heavy jacket, my mid-layer fleece, my insulated vest, stripping down to a single base layer. Then I sat down in the center of the cabin floor and forced myself to stop fighting the cold. The agony was immediate and overwhelming. Cold invaded my body like a living thing, biting into my skin, sinking into my muscles, making my bones ache with a pain I'd never experienced. My teeth chattered so violently, I thought they'd shatter. My entire body shook with violent shivers, my metabolism desperately trying to generate warmth. But I didn't move. I didn't reach for my jacket. I just sat there and let myself freeze, and the cabin responded. The ice on the door grew thicker. The frost on the walls expanded, spreading until every surface was coated in crystalline white. The temperature plummeted past what my thermometer could measure, but the frost kept forming words. Good stay. Still they're trying to get in. I could hear them now, scratching sounds on the walls, on the roof, on the windows, heavy impacts that shook the entire structure. The shapes outside pressed against the glass, and through the ice I could see details I wished I couldn't. Faces that were almost human, but stretched and distorted like reflections in a funhouse mirror. Eyes too large and completely black. Mouths that opened too wide, showing too many teeth arranged in patterns that didn't match any animal I'd ever seen. They wanted in. They wanted me. And the only thing standing between us was the cold. I don't know how long I sat there. Time became meaningless. I was so cold, I'd stopped shivering, which I knew was a terrible sign, the indication that my body was giving up on trying to warm itself. Hypothermia advancing to critical stages, but every time I thought about reaching for my jacket, more frost would form. Not yet almost dawn. They leave at dawn. So I waited. I waited while my extremities went numb. I waited while my core temperature dropped. I waited while those things outside battered the cabin, while their scratching grew more frantic, while their impacts came faster and harder. I waited while my mind started to drift, while I began losing track of where I was and why I was so cold. And then suddenly, it all stopped. The scratching ceased. The impacts ended. I forced my frozen neck to turn, forced my barely functioning eyes to focus on the windows. The shapes were gone. Outside, the faintest hint of dawnlight touched the horizon. The storm was weakening. New words formed on the walls. Go now, fast before they return. I don't remember getting dressed. I don't remember packing. My body moved on pure survival instinct. My frozen fingers somehow managing to zip my jacket, shoulder my pack. The ice on the door had thinned just enough for me to kick through. I burst out into the dying storm and ran on legs that could barely feel the ground beneath them. I reached the fire road by mid-morning. A park ranger found me around 11, delirious, and suffering from severe hypothermia. I spent 6 days in the hospital. I lost 2 toes and the tips of 3 fingers to frostbite. When I was released, I went back with rangers to show them the cabin. We had exact GPS coordinates from my tracking device, but when we reached the location, there was nothing there. No cabin, no foundation, no evidence any structure had ever existed. But in the snow, still preserved, were tracks. Dozens of them, circling where the cabin should have been. The wildlife experts couldn't identify what made them. I know what made them, and I know that cabin saved my life. But sometimes, late at night, I still see frost, forming words on my bedroom walls. You brought them back with you. What would you do if you realized the cave you were exploring was somehow alive and didn't want you to leave? Imagine descending into darkness, only to discover that the walls are breathing and something organic is growing between you and the exit. My name is Silas, and I'm a spelunker, a cave explorer. For 8 years, I've been mapping unexplored cave systems across the eastern United States, documenting geological formations, taking samples, and pushing into places where no human has ever set foot. It's not a hobby for most people. The darkness, the tight spaces, the constant awareness that you're surrounded by millions of tons of rock, it filters out anyone who isn't completely committed. But for me, there's nothing more thrilling than being the first person to see a chamber that's been hidden from the world for thousands of years. In March of last year, I got a tip from a local caver in West Virginia about a newly discovered entrance to what appeared to be a massive, unexplored system in the Appalachians. The entrance had been revealed by a recent rock slide, and preliminary exploration suggested it connected to a network that could stretch for miles. I assembled a team of 3 experienced cavers, people I'd worked with before, people I trusted with my life underground. There was Rivera, a geologist with 15 years of caving experience. There was Phoenix, a photographer who specialized in underground environments. And there was Knox, our safety officer, and the most cautious person I'd ever met in the caving community. If Knox said something was unsafe, we didn't do it. No arguments, no exceptions. We arrived at the site on a Thursday morning, checked and double-checked our gear, reviewed our emergency protocols, and entered the cave system at 10:15 a.m. The plan was simple. A 6-hour exploratory push, mapping as we went, taking samples of interesting formations, and establishing a baseline for future deeper expeditions. We had backup lights, backup batteries, backup communication devices, backup everything. We'd filed our plans with local authorities. We'd done everything right. The first 2 hours were spectacular. The cave was pristine. No evidence of previous human presence. No trash. No graffiti. No disturbed formations. We moved through a series of chambers that ranged from cathedral-sized rooms with stunning stalactites to narrow passages that required crawling. Phoenix was in heaven, photographing formations that would end up in scientific journals. Rivera was collecting mineral samples and muttering excitedly about geological processes. Even Knox seemed relaxed, which for him meant he wasn't actively suggesting we turn back. We were about 2 miles in, roughly 400 feet below the surface, when I noticed something strange. The walls were wet. That's not unusual in cave systems. Moisture is everywhere underground. But this was different. The wetness wasn't water. It was thicker, more viscous, and it had a faint, organic smell, like mushrooms or decay. I stopped the team and examined it more closely with my headlamp. The substance coating the walls looked almost like mucus. It glistened in our lights, and when I touched it with a gloved finger, it was warm. Not cool like cave water. Warm, like body temperature. Anyone else seeing this? I asked, keeping my voice level. Rivera moved closer, examining the walls with a professional eye. I've never seen anything like this. It could be some kind of bacterial colony or slime mold, but the temperature is all wrong. Caves maintain a constant temperature, and biological matter should match that. This is at least 70 degrees. Phoenix started photographing it, her camera flash illuminating the passage ahead. That's when we all saw it at the same time. The walls ahead of us were moving, not dramatically, not obviously, but there was a slow, rhythmic expansion and contraction like the cave was breathing. Knox's voice came through our communication headsets, tight and controlled. We need to reassess. This is outside normal parameters. I agreed, but I also knew we needed more information. Let's move forward 50 feet, document what we're seeing, and then we'll make a decision about whether to continue or abort. We advanced slowly, and the breathing motion became more pronounced. The walls expanded outward, then contracted inward, in a steady rhythm of about 8 breaths per minute. The organic coating grew thicker, and in places it hung from the ceiling in strands that reminded me unnervingly of mucous membranes. That's when Phoenix touched one of the strands. She didn't mean to. She was adjusting her camera, and one of the hanging formations brushed against her exposed neck, just above her collar. The reaction was immediate. The entire cave shuddered, like we'd triggered some kind of reflex. The breathing rhythm accelerated, and the walls began secreting more of the organic substance at a visible rate. "Phoenix, are you okay?" I asked, watching her closely. "Yeah, I'm fine. It just startled me. It felt warm, and..." She stopped mid-sentence, her hand going to her throat. "Does anyone else smell that?" I did. We all did. A sweet, cloying smell that reminded me of overripe fruit and something else I couldn't quite identify. Something chemical. Within seconds, my head started to feel light, disconnected. I looked at Rivera and saw her swaying slightly on her feet. "Gas," Knox said sharply. "Unknown biological agent. We need to exit now." We turned to head back, moving as quickly as safety allowed, but something was wrong. The passage we'd just come through didn't look the same. The walls were closer together, narrower than they'd been minutes before, and they were still contracting. "The cave is closing," Rivera said, her voice rising with the first edge of panic I'd ever heard from her. "It's actually closing around us." She was right. The breathing motion had changed. Instead of gentle expansion and contraction, the walls were now contracting steadily, slowly, but unmistakably reducing the size of the passage. What had been a comfortable walkway was becoming a narrow corridor. In places, we had to turn sideways to fit through spaces that had been wide enough to walk through shoulder to shoulder just minutes before. And the smell was getting stronger. My vision started to blur at the edges. Phoenix stumbled, and I caught her arm. Her pupils were dilated, unfocused. "We're being drugged," I said, the realization cutting through the mental fog. "The cave is releasing something into the air, some kind of spore or gas." Knox pulled out our emergency respirators, and we each strapped one on, but I wasn't sure if we'd already absorbed too much of whatever was in the air. My movements felt sluggish, delayed. Time seemed to be moving strangely, seconds stretching into minutes, or maybe minutes compressing into seconds. I couldn't tell anymore. We pushed forward, or was it backward, toward where the entrance should be. But the cave had changed. Passages that should have been familiar looked different. The organic coating was everywhere now, coating every surface in a thick, glistening layer. And it was moving, slowly pulsing, like we were inside something living, because we were inside something living. The realization hit me with a clarity that cut through the drugged confusion. This wasn't a cave with unusual biological features. This was an organism, a massive, ancient organism that had somehow grown into or become part of the cave system. We hadn't entered a geological formation. We'd entered a body, and it knew we were here. "The entrance," Rivera gasped, pointing ahead. I could see natural light filtering through the darkness, maybe 100 feet ahead. Hope surged through me, despite the overwhelming drowsiness trying to drag me down. We stumbled toward it, supporting Phoenix between us. She'd inhaled more of whatever the cave was releasing, and she could barely walk. The light grew brighter, Closer. 50 feet. 30 feet. 20 feet. Then the walls began to close faster. The breathing rhythm accelerated to something frantic, panicked even. The organic substance started to solidify, becoming thicker, more rope-like. Strands of it stretched across the passage ahead of us like a web, blocking our path to the entrance. Knox pulled out his knife and started cutting through the strands, but more appeared faster than he could clear them. The walls were now contracting fast enough that I could see the movement, closing like a throat swallowing. We had minutes at best before the passage became too narrow to navigate. "Leave the gear," I shouted. "Everything except lights. Move." We dropped our packs, our sampling equipment, everything that slowed us down. Knox cut a path through the organic webbing, while Rivera and I dragged Phoenix forward. The entrance was right there, tantalizingly close, natural daylight streaming in, but the opening was shrinking, the cave literally trying to seal itself with us inside. Knox made it through first, then turned to help pull Phoenix through the rapidly narrowing gap. Rivera went next, having to turn sideways and exhale completely to fit through the opening. I was last, and by the time I reached the entrance, the gap was barely wider than my shoulders. I squeezed through, feeling the wet, warm walls pressing against me from both sides, feeling the organic substance coating my clothes and exposed skin. For a terrible moment, I thought I was stuck, thought the cave was going to hold me there while it finished closing. But Knox and Rivera grabbed my arms and pulled, and I scraped through the opening just as it contracted to the size of a basketball. We collapsed on the rocky ground outside, gasping for air, watching in horror as the cave entrance we'd walked through just hours before sealed itself completely. The rock face looked solid, natural, like there had never been an opening there at all.
All right,
Phoenix
time
was
for our
unconscious
next
but
color.
breathing. We called for emergency services, and she was airlifted to a hospital where she spent 3 days in intensive care, being treated for exposure to unknown biological toxins. The rest of us underwent extensive medical testing. They found spores in our lungs, spores that didn't match any known fungal or bacterial species. The CDC took samples. Multiple agencies got involved. Everyone had questions we couldn't answer. A week later, the team of scientists went back to investigate the site. They found the rock face exactly as we'd left it, completely solid, no evidence of any cave entrance. Ground-penetrating radar showed no hollow spaces behind it. It was like the cave system had never existed. But our gear is still in there. Our packs, our sampling equipment, Phoenix's cameras with hundreds of photos of what we saw. All of it sealed inside something that was alive, something that breathed and thought and defended itself when it detected threats. Sometimes I wake up at night feeling like the walls of my bedroom are contracting, like I'm still inside that cave, slowly being digested. Phoenix refuses to go underground anymore. Rivera changed careers entirely. Knox still caves, but he won't go anywhere in the Appalachians, won't even drive through West Virginia. And sometimes, when I'm alone and it's very quiet, I swear I can still smell that sweet cloying scent. And I wonder if we really got all of those spores out of our lungs, or if something is still growing inside us, waiting, breathing, remembering the cave that tried to keep us forever. The vanishing camp location, Cherokee National Forest, Tennessee. Imagine going to sleep in your...
Now, this one, I've actually been to Cherokee National Forest. And that place is not a joke. I went camping with my brother and a few of his friends there a few times, and I can tell you this, I will not go back. I don't care if I have an arsenal with me. I am not going back into that forest. No. That place is real. There shit happens there that you can't explain. And yeah, no thank you. Like, you hear stories about dogmen, and there's another place I want to show you guys called Bankhead National Forest. There's places at Bankhead National Forest that civilians are not allowed to enter, where if you go so far into the restricted area, forest rangers will find you and escort your ass out. Like, legitimately come to wherever you are and escort you out. Because if they will tell you straight up, if they come and get you and you go back in there after they got you out and you re-enter the restricted area after dark, you are on your own. They will not send anyone for you until the sun comes up. If you call for aid after dark, they're not coming to get you. They will straight up tell you. There are things in Bankhead National Forest that cannot be explained. There have been so many documented encounters that it's unreal. Like, how many people have had experiences with these creatures in that forest. And they're no joke. Like, you may not believe in it, but they believe in you. You can rest assured of that. They will lure you to them. It's terrifying. Look it up. Cryptids in Bankhead National Forest. Hikers going missing. Bankhead National Forest. Conspiracy theories around missing hikers in Bankhead National Forest. Look up Dogmen, Bankhead National Forest. Like, I'm not kidding. I will never go there. Ever again. I don't care if I have an escort. I'm not doing it. Not in the restricted area. No.
And waking up somewhere completely different, with no memory of how you got there. What would you do if your campsite kept moving on its own, dragging you deeper into restricted territory while you slept? My name is Rowan, and I'm a wilderness survival instructor. I teach people how to stay alive in the backcountry, how to read terrain, how to navigate without technology, how to remain calm when everything goes wrong. I've spent more nights alone in the wilderness than most people spend in hotels over their entire lifetime. I'm comfortable in isolation. I trust my skills. I know how to handle myself when things get unpredictable, but nothing in my 20 years of outdoor experience prepared me for what happened in Cherokee National Forest last September. I'd planned a solo 10-day primitive camping trip. No tent, no stove, just a tarp, a sleeping bag, basic tools, and my knowledge. It was supposed to be a reset, a way to disconnect completely and test some new wilderness techniques I'd been developing for my advanced courses. I filed my itinerary with the ranger station marking my intended camping zones on a topographical map. All of them were in approved backcountry areas, well within legal boundaries. The first 2 days were perfect.
Another thing I would like to say, completely separate from anything paranormal, even removing the paranormal aspect here, if you are an avid camper, always, 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 I cannot stress this enough. Always, no matter what, no exceptions, no ifs, ands, or buts, always leave your itinerary with the forest rangers. Because anything can go wrong, and that's like omitting anything paranormal happening. This is just nature. Anything can happen out there. People go missing all the time. And not even from paranormal stuff. From natural shit. Falling on a limb, breaking your leg, breaking an arm, falling in a pit, getting attacked by wild animals. Anything could happen. Always leave an itinerary with the forest ranger. Always. You never know how fast something could go wrong out there. And if you go missing longer than you're supposed to be there, at least that way they know where to start looking for you. If you leave your itinerary with them, they know where you started, where you intended to go, and they have a path of trajectory. Meaning, they know to start here, they know you shouldn't have went past here, and they've got somewhere to start looking if something goes wrong. I cannot stress enough how important it is to do this. Don't be an idiot. Don't get out there and be like, I can handle it. Nothing's going to go wrong. What could possibly happen? The cemetery and missing person lists are littered with people who thought that. Always leave your itinerary with the forest rangers. Don't be an idiot.
I set up camp in a small clearing near a creek, built a debris shelter, established a fire pit, and settled into the rhythm of wilderness living. No phone, no watch, no connection to the outside world. Just me, the forest, and the basic tasks of survival. Gathering water, processing firewood, preparing food, maintaining my camp. On the third night, I went to sleep around 9 p.m., exhausted from a day of hiking and foraging. I positioned my shelter carefully, 30 feet from the creek to avoid flood risk, under a large oak for wind protection, with clear sight lines in all directions. I'd even placed small sticks and leaves in specific patterns around my camp perimeter, an old trick to detect if animals or people approached while I slept. I woke up at dawn feeling disoriented, like I'd had too much to drink the night before, even though I'd consumed nothing but creek water. My head was foggy, my sense of balance slightly off, but what really confused me was the view. My shelter was still intact. My gear was exactly where I'd left it, but the landscape was wrong. Instead of being 30 feet from the creek, I was at least 200 yards away. I could hear the water, distant now instead of the close burble I'd fallen asleep to. The oak tree that had been sheltering my camp was gone, replaced by a cluster of pine trees I didn't remember. And the clearing itself was different, bigger, with different vegetation patterns. I stood up slowly, scanning the area, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My first thought was that I'd sleepwalked, somehow packed up my entire camp, and relocated in an unconscious state. But that was impossible. My shelter was a fixed structure built from branches and forest debris. It couldn't be moved without completely disassembling it. And all my gear, my pack, my tools, my food cache, everything was arranged exactly as I'd left it. Nothing was disturbed. I pulled out my GPS unit, something I carried for emergencies, even though I rarely used it. The coordinates showed I was roughly 200 yards northwest of where I'd fallen asleep. According to the device, I hadn't moved, but according to the device's log, my campsite location had somehow shifted during the night. That didn't make sense. GPS coordinates are fixed, they don't change. Either I'd moved, or the GPS was malfunctioning. I spent an hour trying to rationalize it. Maybe I'd been more tired than I realized. Maybe I'd set up camp in a different spot than I remembered. Maybe my sense of direction had been off. But none of those explanations fit the evidence. I decided to stay put for another night to see if it happened again. If it did, I'd know something genuinely strange was occurring, and I'd abort the trip. I reset my camp perimeter markers, making them more elaborate this time, and I tied a cord from my wrist to a tree, thinking that if I was somehow sleepwalking, the cord would wake me. That night, I barely slept. Every sound jerked me toward consciousness. Every rustle of leaves, every crack of a branch, every nightbird call had me reaching for my headlamp. But nothing happened. No animals approached, no people wandered by. Nothing disturbed my camp. And yet, when dawn came, I was somewhere else again. This time I'd moved nearly a quarter mile. I was in a completely different part of the forest, in terrain I definitely hadn't explored. The cord I'd tied to my wrist was still attached to a tree, but it was a different tree, in a different location. My perimeter markers were undisturbed, still in their exact positions relative to my camp. It was as if my entire campsite, the ground itself, had been picked up and relocated while I slept. I checked my GPS. The coordinates had changed again, showing me even further northwest than before. But more disturbing was the log. According to the device's tracking history, I hadn't walked here. The GPS showed a straight line from my previous location to my current one, as if I'd teleported. Fear crept in then, cold and insistent. This wasn't exhaustion or confusion. This was something fundamentally wrong with reality itself, or with the specific part of the forest. I decided to leave immediately, to hike back to the trailhead and get out of Cherokee National Forest. But when I checked my map and GPS to plot the fastest route out, I saw something that made my stomach drop. I was no longer in approved backcountry territory. At some point during the relocations, my camp had moved into a restricted zone, an area marked clearly on every map as closed to public access. No camping, no hiking, no entry without special permits. I'd been moved onto forbidden ground. I packed up quickly, determined to hike out before anyone discovered I was in a restricted area. I didn't want to lose my wilderness permits or face fines for trespassing, even though I hadn't entered the zone deliberately. I oriented myself southeast toward the nearest trail that would lead me out and started walking. I hiked for 6 hours straight, maintaining a steady pace, following my GPS religiously. According to the device, I covered nearly 8 miles. I should have been well clear of the restricted zone, should have intersected with a marked trail around hour 4. But the forest just continued, unchanging, with no trails, no markers, no signs of the boundary I should have crossed. As the sun began to set, I had to make a decision I dreaded. I had to stop and make camp for the night. I couldn't safely navigate in the dark, and I was exhausted from the hiking and the stress. I set up in a small clearing, but this time I didn't build a shelter. I just laid out my sleeping bag and forced myself to stay awake, determined to witness whatever was happening. I lasted until about midnight before exhaustion dragged me under. My last conscious thought was a prayer that I'd wake up in the same spot. I didn't. Dawn found me in yet another location, but this time something was different. There were other camps visible through the trees, not active camps, abandoned ones. I could see the remnants of shelters, cold fire pits, scattered gear. I approached the nearest one cautiously and felt my skin crawl. The shelter design was similar to mine. Debris construction, efficient layout. The gear scattered around looked professional. High quality equipment that no experienced camper would abandon. And there was a journal, water damaged but readable, sitting next to a rotted backpack. I opened it and read the first entry. Day 3 in Cherokee National Forest. Camp keeps moving while I sleep. Trying to hike out but can't find the boundary. If anyone finds this. The entries continued for 7 more days, each one more desperate, more confused, more terrified. The final entry, barely legible, just said, "It's collecting us. Don't fall asleep in the forest." I looked around at the other abandoned camps, counting at least 5 visible from where I stood. How many people had this happened to? How many had never made it out? I ran. I didn't pack, didn't think, just ran in the direction my GPS indicated was southeast. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. And when I collapsed, I forced myself to get up and run more. I couldn't let myself fall asleep. Not here. Not in whatever this place was. As dusk approached, I saw it. A road. An actual paved road cutting through the forest. I stumbled onto it, sobbing with relief, and followed it until I saw headlights. A park ranger's vehicle. I flagged it down, and the ranger's expression shifted from concern to confusion to alarm as I babbled my story. They took me to the ranger station where I tried to explain what had happened. They were professional, kind, but clearly skeptical. They checked the coordinates I provided for the abandoned camps, and their faces went carefully neutral. Those coordinates were in an area that had been closed to the public for 15 years, ever since a series of mysterious disappearances. They never found the abandoned camps when they searched. They never found any evidence of what I'd experienced, but they did find something interesting in their records. 12 missing persons over the past 20 years. All experienced campers, all last seen in Cherokee National Forest. All in the same general area where I'd been relocated. I haven't been back to Cherokee. I still teach wilderness survival, but I'm very careful now about where I take students. And I never, ever recommend solo primitive camping in national forests with histories of disappearances. Because I know now that some places in the wilderness are hungry. They don't want you to leave. They'll move you while you sleep, drag you deeper into restricted zones where no one will look for you, surround you with the camps of others who couldn't escape. And eventually, when you're too exhausted to run anymore, when you finally fall asleep in the wrong spot, you become another abandoned camp for the next person to find. I was lucky. I woke up near a road, but sometimes late at night, I still wake up feeling disoriented, checking my surroundings compulsively to make sure I'm still in my own bedroom, still in the same place I fell asleep, because part of me will never stop wondering if that forest is done with me, or if one night I'll close my eyes in my bed and wake up back in those woods, part of a collection that never stops growing. The rescue. That wasn't location, Mount Mitchell, North Carolina. Have you ever been rescued by someone who insisted you were the one who wasn't real? Picture this. You're lost on a mountain. A search team finds you, but the person they're rescuing claims they've been watching you search for them for days, and you only just arrived. My name is Haven, and I work as a paramedic on a volunteer search and rescue team in North Carolina. I've been doing this for 6 years, responding to calls about lost hikers, injured climbers, people who wandered off trail and couldn't find their way back. Most rescues are straightforward. Locate the person, assess their condition, guide them to safety, or call for medical evacuation if needed. It's demanding work, sometimes dangerous, but it follows predictable patterns. You train for scenarios, you execute protocols, you bring people home. What happened on Mount Mitchell last November didn't follow any pattern I'd ever encountered. It didn't follow any pattern that should exist in reality. The call came in on a Friday evening around 6 p.m. A solo female hiker had activated her emergency beacon near the summit of Mount Mitchell the highest peak east of the Mississippi. Her beacon signal was strong and stationary, which suggested she was injured and couldn't move. Weather conditions were deteriorating, temperature dropping, wind picking up, visibility decreasing. We had maybe a 4-hour window to reach her before conditions became too dangerous for rescue operations. Our team assembled quickly. There were 4 of us: myself, a team leader named Marcus with 15 years of experience, a wilderness medic named Chen, and a younger rescue volunteer named Tyler, who was on his 3rd mission. We loaded our gear, reviewed the coordinates, and started up the mountain at 6:45 p.m. The hike to her location should have taken about 2.5 hours. The trail was well maintained, and even in deteriorating conditions, we were experienced enough to move efficiently. We maintained communication with base, updating our position every 30 minutes. Everything was proceeding normally. We reached the coordinates at 9:20 p.m. The beacon signal was strong. We were within 50 feet of her location. We spread out, sweeping the area with our high-powered searchlights, calling out to let her know rescue had arrived. Tyler found her first. "Over here. I've got her." She was standing at the edge of a rocky outcrop, perfectly still, staring down into the valley below. Not sitting, not lying down, injured, standing upright, facing away from us. That was our first indication that something was wrong. People who activate emergency beacons because they're injured don't usually stand at cliff edges. "Ma'am," I called out as we approached carefully. "We're search and rescue. You activated an emergency beacon. Are you injured?" She didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge us at all, just kept staring into the darkness of the valley below. Marcus and I exchanged glances. Possible hypothermia, possible head injury, possible psychological break. We'd seen all of it before. We approached slowly, non-threateningly, using calm voices. "Ma'am, my name is Haven. I'm a paramedic. We're here to help you. Can you tell me your name?" She finally turned around, and what I saw in her face made me instinctively step back. It wasn't fear or pain or confusion. It was something else entirely. Recognition mixed with anger, mixed with something that looked almost like relief. "You're not real," she said flatly. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "You're not actually here." "I assure you we're very real," Marcus said gently. "We received your emergency signal. We're here to take you off the mountain. Are you injured? Are you in pain?" She laughed, a sound that had no humor in it. "I've been watching you search for me for 3 days. I've watched you walk right past me dozens of times. I've screamed at you, waved my arms, tried to touch you. You never saw me. You never heard me. And now, suddenly you can see me." The 4 of us looked at each other. This was worse than we thought. She was clearly experiencing severe confusion, possibly exposure-related psychosis. We needed to get her warm, assess her physical condition, and evacuate her immediately. "Ma'am, I need you to understand that we just arrived," I said carefully. "We received your emergency signal about 2.5 hours ago. We hiked up here to find you. This is the first time we've been in this location." "Liar." The word came out sharp, certain. "I've been here since Tuesday. Today is Friday. I've watched search teams, your search teams, come through this area for 3 days. I saw you." She pointed directly at Marcus. "You were here yesterday morning with a different group. You walked within 10 feet of where I was sitting. I screamed your name. You looked right through me." Marcus's face had gone pale. "I wasn't on a mission yesterday. I was at my daughter's school play. And you," she turned to Chen. "You were here Wednesday afternoon. You stopped right there," she pointed to a spot about 20 feet away, "to drink water. I ran up to you. I grabbed your arm. My hand went through you like you were made of smoke." Chen's voice was tight. "I haven't been on Mount Mitchell in 3 weeks." This was escalating in a dangerous direction. We needed to de-escalate, focus on getting her stable and off the mountain. But she wasn't done. "I've been trapped here," she continued, her voice rising. "I can see other hikers sometimes, but they can't see me. I can see search teams, but I can't interact with them. It's like I'm a ghost in my own life. And now, suddenly you four can see me, can hear me, and you're trying to tell me you just arrived, that I'm the one who's confused. Let's start with basics, I said, trying to regain control of the situation. What's your name? Jade. Jade Morrison. I'm from Asheville. I came up here Tuesday morning for a day hike. I got disoriented near the summit, activated my beacon around noon Tuesday, and then you all started showing up. Search teams, helicopters, dogs. But none of you could see me. I thought I'd died. I thought I was actually dead, and didn't realize it. I pulled out my radio. Base, this is Team 4. We've located the subject. Female, early 30s, mobile, appears uninjured but displaying signs of confusion and possible exposure-related psychosis. Requesting information on missing person reports for a Jade Morrison from Asheville. The response came back within minutes, and the words made my skin crawl. Team 4, we show an active missing person case for Jade Morrison, age 32, from Asheville. Reported missing by family on Wednesday morning when she failed to return from a day hike on Mount Mitchell. Emergency beacon was activated Tuesday at 12:15 p.m. Multiple search operations have been conducted over the past 3 days with negative results. You're saying you've located her? I looked at Jade, at her dirty clothes that showed 3 days of wear, at her face that showed 3 days of fear and exposure, at her hands that trembled with exhaustion and cold. Then I looked at my team, all of whom had gone very quiet. Confirmed, I said into the radio. We have visual contact and verbal communication with the subject. Team 4, please confirm, have there been any unusual circumstances in this rescue? Any anomalies? Marcus took the radio from me. Base, subject claims she's been visible at this location for 3 days and that previous search teams have been unable to see or hear her, despite being in close proximity. Subject appears physically consistent with 3 days of exposure. Request immediate guidance. The silence from base lasted longer than it should have. When the response came, the voice sounded carefully controlled. Team 4, maintain position. Do not attempt to move the subject. Additional personnel are being dispatched to your location. ETA 45 minutes. Base, weather conditions are deteriorating. Subject needs immediate medical evacuation. Team 4, I repeat, maintain current position. Do not move the subject. This is not a request. We stood there, in the cold, in the growing wind. The 5 of us, not understanding what was happening, but knowing it was something far outside our training. Jade was shivering now, and I gave her my jacket despite the strange orders we'd received. Why can you see me now? She asked quietly. What changed? None of us had an answer. We waited in uncomfortable silence until we saw lights approaching. Not just another search team, but people in different uniforms. Federal agents, or something similar. They had equipment I didn't recognize. One of them, a woman in her 50s with gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen things that broke normal categories, approached Jade directly. Ms. Morrison, I'm Dr. Reeves. I need you to answer some questions. When did you first notice that people couldn't see you? Tuesday afternoon, after I activated my beacon. And before that, did anything unusual happen? Did you experience any strange sensations? See anything out of the ordinary? Jade's face changed, remembering something. There was a light, right before I got disoriented. A light in the forest that didn't move like a normal light. It was pulsing. And when I got close to it, I felt strange, disconnected. And then everything shifted, and people started not seeing me. Dr. Reeves nodded like this confirmed something she already suspected. She turned to us. Your team needs to leave the mountain immediately. Don't discuss what you've seen here. Don't include certain details in your reports. You'll receive specific instructions. What's happening to her? I asked. What's wrong with her? Nothing is wrong with her, Dr. Reeves said. She's been existing in a slightly different phase of reality for 3 days. Your team happened to arrive at a moment when the phases aligned enough for mutual perception. It's temporary. If you'd arrived an hour earlier or later, you wouldn't have seen her at all. That's impossible, Chen said. And yet here we are, Dr. Reeves replied. Now leave, quickly, before the alignment shifts and you get caught in the wrong phase yourselves. We didn't argue. We hiked down that mountain faster than safety protocols recommended, and none of us spoke until we were back in the parking lot. Our official reports listed the rescue as successful, subject located, and transferred to specialized medical personnel. We never saw Jade again. We never received follow-up information. But sometimes, when I'm on search operations now, I wonder about the people we don't find. The ones whose beacons we track, but whose bodies never appear. The ones who vanish completely, leaving no trace. I wonder if they're still out there, trapped in phases of reality we can't perceive, watching us search for them while we walk right past, unable to see them, unable to help. And I wonder if one day I'll be the one who slips between the phases screaming for rescue while the world walks through me like I'm made of smoke, like I never existed at all. Picture yourself walking forward for 8 hours straight, covering 15 miles according to your fitness tracker, but passing the same carved tree every 30 minutes. What if you weren't going in circles? What if the trail itself was caught in an endless loop and you were just one of many trapped inside it? My name is Sierra, and I'm a long-distance trail runner, not the casual kind who jogs a few miles on weekends. I compete in ultramarathons, 50-mile races through mountain terrain that most people wouldn't attempt on foot. I've run trails across the country, pushed my body to its absolute limits, and I know the difference between physical exhaustion and something fundamentally wrong with reality. What happened to me in the Allegheny Mountains last May was not exhaustion. It was something else entirely. I'd planned a solo training run on the Laurel Highlands Trail, a 70-mile route I'd run sections of before but never completed in one push. My goal was ambitious: cover the entire distance in under 24 hours, testing my endurance and navigation skills. I started at dawn on a Saturday morning, my pack loaded with hydration, nutrition gels, a GPS watch, and emergency supplies. The weather was perfect. My body felt strong, and the first 10 miles went exactly as planned. The trail was well marked with yellow blazes painted on trees every 100 yards or so. I maintained a steady pace, hitting my mile markers on schedule, enjoying the rhythm of footfalls and breathing that every distance runner knows. By mile 12, I was in that beautiful zone where your body takes over and your mind can drift, where running feels effortless and meditative. That's when I noticed the tree. It was distinctive. A large oak with someone's initials carved deep into the bark. MK plus TR, inside a crooked heart. Below it, someone had carved 2019. I registered it as I passed, the way you register details on a long run without really thinking about them. Just another landmark on a trail full of landmarks. 30 minutes later, I passed it again. My first thought was that I'd somehow gotten turned around, doubled back without realizing it. But that didn't make sense. I'd been following the yellow blazes continuously. I'd been moving forward the entire time, never backtracking, never taking any side trails. And my GPS watch showed I'd covered another 2 miles since first seeing that tree. I stopped and studied my watch more carefully. According to the device, I was 2 miles further along the trail than I'd been when I first saw the carved initials. But according to my eyes, I was standing in front of the exact same tree looking at the exact same carving. I even checked the details, the crooked heart, the specific way the letters were formed, a small knot in the bark just above the 2019. It was identical. I shook it off. Probably 2 similar trees with the same carving. Couples carved their initials in multiple places. It was a coincidence. I kept running. 30 minutes later, I passed it again. Same tree, same carving, same knot in the bark. This time, I stopped completely and checked my GPS coordinates against my trail map. According to the GPS, I'd now covered 16 miles. I should be approaching a creek crossing, a section of the trail I knew well from previous runs. But instead, I was standing in front of this tree for the third time. I looked ahead and behind me on the trail. Everything appeared normal. Packed dirt path, yellow blazes marking the route, dense forest on both sides. No visual indication that anything was wrong. But I definitely passed this same spot 3 times in 90 minutes, while my GPS insisted I'd been moving forward continuously. I decided to mark the tree. I pulled out a piece of bright orange surveyor's tape from my emergency kit and tied it around a branch near the carved initials. Then I set a timer on my watch for exactly 30 minutes and started running again, paying close attention to every detail of the trail. I counted my steps. I noted landmarks, specific rock formations, unusual tree shapes, a fallen log covered in bright green moss. I watched my GPS coordinates change with every 1/10 of a mile. Everything suggested I was making forward progress along the trail. When my timer went off, I looked up. The tree with orange surveyor's tape was directly in front of me. My heart rate spiked, and it had nothing to do with physical exertion. I stopped and stared at that orange tape, at the carved initials below it, trying to make sense of what was happening. According to my GPS, I'd covered another 2 miles. According to reality, I'd just completed a perfect loop back to my starting point. I pulled out my phone to call for help, but I had no signal. Not unusual in the mountains, but frustrating given the circumstances. I checked my map again, trying to find an explanation. Maybe the trail looped back on itself in a way that wasn't clearly marked. But no, the Laurel Highlands Trail was a point-to-point route, not a loop. It shouldn't be possible to return to the same spot by continuing forward. That's when I saw the other runner. She appeared from around a bend ahead of me, moving at a steady pace. The first human I'd seen in hours. Relief flooded through me. Another person meant I could confirm I wasn't losing my mind, could ask if she'd experienced anything strange. "Hey," I called out, waving to get her attention. She didn't acknowledge me, just kept running with the focused expression of someone deep in their own rhythm. As she got closer, I noticed she was wearing a distinctive bright purple running jacket and had her dark hair pulled back in a French braid. She ran past me without slowing down, without making eye contact, like I wasn't even there. I turned to call after her, but she'd already disappeared around the bend behind me. Frustrated and increasingly unnerved, I decided to try something different. Instead of running, I walked. Slowly, paying attention to every single detail of the trail, counting my steps, looking for any indication of where the loop might be occurring. I walked for 45 minutes, covering what should have been about 2 miles at my walking pace. My GPS confirmed the distance, and then I reached the tree again. The orange tape fluttered in the breeze, mocking me. This time, someone else was there. A man in his 50s, standing exactly where I'd been standing, staring at the carved initials, with an expression of confused horror I recognized immediately. "You're stuck too," I said. It wasn't a question. He jumped, startled, then nodded slowly. "How long have you been here?" "About 3 hours. I keep ending up at this tree no matter which direction I go." "You?" "5 hours," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "I've passed this tree 11 times. I thought I was having a stroke or something, that my brain was malfunctioning. But you see it too." "I see it too. I'm Sierra. Levi." He gestured at the trail ahead. "I've tried running forward, walking forward, even walking backward, thinking maybe the trail was somehow reversed. Always end up here. My GPS says I've covered 22 miles, but I've been going in a loop the entire time." "Have you seen other people?" I asked. His face changed. "Yes. A woman in a purple jacket. She ran right past me like I wasn't here. The same woman I'd seen." "When?" "First time was about 2 hours ago, but I've seen her 3 times now. Same purple jacket, same braid, same focused expression. She's stuck in the loop too, but she can't see us. Or we can't see each other at the same time. I don't know." A terrible possibility occurred to me. What if we're all experiencing different versions of the same loop? What if there are dozens of people stuck here, all passing the same landmarks, but we can only see each other occasionally when something aligns? Levi pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. I took this an hour ago. Look in the background. I zoomed in on the image. Behind Levi, barely visible, were shadowy figures on the trail. Lots of them. Maybe 20 people, all walking or running, all translucent like ghosts. I didn't see them when I took the photo, he said. They only showed up in the image. We're not alone here. We're just not all existing in the same moment, at the same time. I felt sick. How many people were trapped in this loop? How long had they been here? I thought about the woman in the purple jacket running past us with that focused expression. Was she even aware she was stuck? Or had she been looping for so long that it had become her entire reality? We need to get off this trail, I said. Not forward or backward. Off the trail entirely. Into the woods. I tried that, Levi said. Walked perpendicular to the trail for what should have been a quarter mile. Came out on the trail again, right at this tree. What if we both go? At the same time. Different directions. We agreed to try. I went north into the forest. Levi went south. We both walked for exactly 15 minutes, timed on our watches, moving directly away from the trail. We both ended up back at the tree, approaching from different directions, arriving within seconds of each other. This is impossible, Levi said, and he looked like he might cry. This violates basic physics. Space doesn't work like this. But it was working like this. We were trapped in some kind of spatial anomaly, an endless loop that kept returning us to the same point, no matter what direction we traveled or how far we went. I sat down, suddenly exhausted despite my endurance training. Our bodies can't keep this up forever. Eventually we'll run out of water, nutrition, energy. What happens then? Levi sat down beside me. Maybe that's when we become like the others. The ones in the photo. The ones who've been here so long they're barely visible anymore. We sat in silence for a while, watching other runners and hikers pass by. Some solid and visible, others translucent. None of them acknowledging our presence. All of them trapped. All of them repeating the same loop over and over. Then something changed. The woman in the purple jacket appeared again, but this time she stopped. She looked directly at us with an expression of shock and relief. "You can see me," she gasped. "You can actually see me. I've been alone for so long. How long have you been here?" "Hours," I said. "You?" "I don't know anymore. Days, maybe." I stopped counting. I just kept running because I didn't know what else to do. 3 of us now, visible to each other. Levi showed her the photo with the shadowy figures. Her face went pale. "We need to do something different," she said. "All of us, at the same time. Maybe if enough of us act in coordination, we can break the loop. We don't know if that will work. We don't know if we'll ever escape. But as I sit here now, watching my GPS insist I've covered 43 miles, while sitting motionless at this tree, I realize that distance doesn't mean what I thought it meant. Progress doesn't mean what I thought it meant. And I wonder how many other trails across the world are caught in loops like this, collecting runners and hikers who never arrive at their destinations, who just keep covering miles that go nowhere forever. Have you ever wondered what's really inside a lightning strike? Storm chasers in the Rhone Highlands captured something on film that defied explanation.
So close.
Humanoid figures standing motionless inside lightning bolts. And when the team tried to leave, those figures started moving closer with every flash. My name is Atlas, and I'm a storm chaser and meteorologist. For the past 9 years, I pursued severe weather systems across the country, documenting lightning patterns, tornado formations, and extreme atmospheric phenomena for research institutions and documentary productions. I've been within a quarter mile of EF4 tornadoes. I filmed lightning strikes from distances that make insurance companies refuse to cover my equipment. And I've spent countless nights in my reinforced chase vehicle watching nature's most violent displays. I respect the power of weather, but I've never feared it. Weather follows patterns, obeys physics, operates within predictable parameters, even at its most extreme. What I encountered in the Rhone Highlands last August shattered every assumption I'd held about the natural world. I was tracking an unusual storm system that had meteorologists across the region puzzled. The weather models showed conflicting data, storm cells forming and dissipating in patterns that didn't match any known atmospheric behavior. Lightning strikes were occurring at rates and intensities far beyond what the conditions should produce. The National Weather Service had issued warnings for the area, but they couldn't explain what was causing the anomalous readings. I assembled a small team for the chase. There was Ember, my equipment specialist and videographer, who'd been documenting storms with me for 5 years. There was Finn, an atmospheric physicist from the university who specialized in electrical phenomena and jumped at the chance to observe these unusual readings in person. And there was Cole, our driver and logistics coordinator, who kept us safe and mobile during high-risk chases. We positioned ourselves on a high ridge in the Rhone Highlands around 4 p.m., giving us clear sight lines across the valley where the storm was building. The clouds were already unusual, too dark, too low, moving in patterns that seemed almost purposeful rather than driven by wind currents. The air had that electric quality that comes before major lightning activity, making the hair on our arms stand up even though the storm was still miles away. Ember set up our high-speed cameras, equipment capable of capturing lightning strikes at thousands of frames per second. Finn deployed his electrical field monitors and atmospheric sensors. I coordinated our position and maintained communication with the Weather Service, feeding them real-time observations. Cole kept the vehicle running and monitored our escape routes in case the storm moved toward us faster than predicted. The first lightning strike occurred at 4:37 p.m., a massive bolt that connected cloud to ground about 2 miles away, bright enough to leave after images in our vision even through our protective eyewear. Ember's high-speed camera captured it perfectly. "Got it," she said, already reviewing the footage on her monitor. Then her voice changed. "Wait. Atlas, you need to see this." I moved to look at her screen. She played back the strike in extreme slow motion, the kind of playback that breaks a lightning bolt down into individual frames, showing the progression of the electrical discharge. Lightning typically looks like a jagged line, a path of least resistance through the atmosphere. But this strike looked different. There was something inside it. A shape. Humanoid but wrong. Too tall, proportions that didn't match any living creature. And it wasn't being struck by lightning. It was standing inside the bolt, perfectly still, as if the electrical discharge was forming around it rather than through it. "Equipment malfunction," I suggested, but I didn't believe it. Amber's cameras were top of the line, meticulously maintained. "No malfunction," Finn said quietly. He was staring at his electrical field monitors, with an expression I'd never seen on him before, fear mixed with fascination. "The readings don't make sense. That lightning strike had a sustained duration of 3.2 seconds. Lightning doesn't sustain. It's instantaneous, maybe a few milliseconds for complex strikes. But 3.2 seconds, that's impossible. And the electrical signature was wrong. It wasn't behaving like a standard discharge." Another strike hit, closer this time, maybe a mile away. Ember's camera caught it, and we watched the slow motion playback together. Same thing. A figure inside the lightning, standing motionless. But this time we could see more detail. It looked vaguely human. Head, torso, limbs. But the proportions were all wrong. Arms too long. Head tilted at an angle that would break a human neck. "We need to document this," Finn said, his scientific training overriding his obvious unease. "Whatever this is, it's unprecedented. We need multiple angles, different equipment, comparative data. We repositioned our cameras to cover a wider area. The storm was moving closer now, the lightning strikes increasing in frequency. Every single bolt contained one of those figures, sometimes multiple figures in a single strike. They stood motionless, perfectly still, despite being inside electrical discharges, powerful enough to vaporize organic matter. Then, at 4:58 p.m., something changed. A lightning strike hit less than a quarter mile away, close enough that the thunder was almost instantaneous, loud enough to hurt our ears despite our protection. Ember caught it on camera. The figure inside the bolt was closer than any we'd filmed before, clear enough that we could see details that made my stomach turn. Its eyes, or what passed for eyes, were too large, completely black, reflective like insect eyes. Its mouth was open too wide, showing what looked like too many teeth arranged in spiral patterns. And for the first time, it moved. Just slightly. Its head turned toward us. Did that thing just look at us? Cole asked, his voice tight. Another strike, even closer. Another figure. This one was definitely oriented toward our position. Its arms, those two long arms, were extended slightly in our direction. We should go, I said, my chase instincts finally overriding my documentation impulses. Now. But when Cole turned the key, nothing happened. The vehicle's engine was dead. All our electronics, phones, radios, backup equipment were dead. Only Ember's cameras were still functioning, running on isolated battery systems designed to survive electromagnetic interference. They're in every strike now, Ember said, pointing at the sky. She was right. The lightning was coming in a circle around our position, a ring of strikes, each one containing multiple figures, all of them oriented toward us. And with each strike, they were closer. Not the lightning strikes themselves. Those maintained their distance. But the figures inside them were moving, advancing through the electrical discharges like people walking through doorways. Finn's voice was shaking when he spoke. They're using the lightning as transport, as a medium. They're not in our reality normally, but when lightning creates a path, they can use it to cross over. And they've noticed us noticing them. Another strike. The figure inside it was close enough that we could have touched it if we'd reached out. It stood there for the 3.2-second duration of the bolt, those black reflective eyes locked on our position. Then the lightning ended, and the figure vanished. For maybe 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then lightning struck the vehicle. We should have died. A direct lightning strike to a vehicle can generate temperatures of 50,000 degrees, can melt metal, can kill everyone inside instantly. But the strike didn't damage the vehicle. It just held, sustained, that impossible 3.2-second duration. And during those seconds, one of the figures was inside our vehicle with us. I could see it clearly, less than 3 feet away. Its skin, if it was skin, looked like it was made of electrical current, constantly moving, flickering. Its eyes reflected my terrified face back at me. Its mouth was open in that too wide spiral of teeth, and I could hear a sound coming from it, a frequency that made my brain hurt, that felt like it was trying to communicate something my human mind wasn't equipped to understand. Then the lightning ended. The figure vanished. Our vehicle's systems came back online. Cole had the engine started before any of us could process what had happened, and he was driving, crashing through underbrush and over rough terrain, not caring about the equipment we were leaving behind, just trying to get distance between us and that ridge. We made it maybe 2 miles before the storm caught up with us. Lightning strikes all around us, dozens of them, hundreds of them, more lightning activity than should be possible in any natural storm. And every single bolt contained figures, watching us, following us, getting closer. The lightning rod, Finn shouted suddenly. Commercial buildings, tall structures, they ground lightning, redirect it. If we can reach something that provides a more attractive target, the strikes might leave us alone. Cole aimed for a communications tower we'd passed on the way up. a tall metal structure on a distant ridge. We drove through conditions that should have been impossible to navigate, with lightning striking so close that the heat was coming through the vehicle's walls, with thunder continuous and deafening, with those figures visible in every flash reaching for us. We reached the tower at 5:43 p.m. The moment we parked in its shadow, the strikes stopped targeting our vehicle. They hit the tower instead, over and over, hundreds of strikes in the span of minutes. And in every strike, figures climbed down the tower, moving through the metal structure like it was a staircase, descending toward ground level. "Out!" I screamed. "Away from the tower! Run!" We abandoned the vehicle and ran down the ridge, away from the tower, away from the storm. Behind us, lightning strike after lightning strike hit that tower, and through the continuous electrical discharge, we could see dozens of figures descending, gathering, a congregation of things that lived inside electrical phenomena and had found a door into our world. We ran for 40 minutes, stumbling through forest and rough terrain, until we reached a paved road and flagged down a passing truck. The driver thought we were insane, talking about creatures and lightning, but he gave us a ride to the nearest town. By the time we returned to the site 3 days later with park rangers and additional equipment, the storm had passed. The communications tower was undamaged. Our vehicle was undamaged. All our equipment was gone, taken or destroyed. We never found out which. The only thing remaining was Ember's primary camera, the one that had been recording continuously. We reviewed the footage, hours of it. Every lightning strike contained those figures. And in the final frames recorded after we'd fled, the camera had captured something that still gives me nightmares. The figures had reached the ground. They were standing in a circle around the camera, and they were looking directly into the lens, those reflective black eyes staring at whoever would watch the recording later. At us. The footage was confiscated by federal authorities within a week. We were interviewed separately, told that what we'd experienced was explainable through atmospheric phenomena and equipment malfunction, told that discussing it publicly would result in legal consequences. Our research credentials were suspended pending evaluation. But I know what I saw. Finn knows. Ember knows. Cole quit storm chasing entirely and moved to Arizona, as far from severe weather as he could get. Finn stopped researching atmospheric electricity and switched to theoretical physics, trying to find mathematical frameworks that could explain entities existing inside electrical discharges. Amber and I still chase storms sometimes, but we're careful now. We avoid unusual systems, avoid lightning activity that doesn't match established patterns. And when we do film lightning, we always check the footage afterward, frame by frame, looking for shapes that shouldn't be there. Because we know now that we're not alone in the storms. Something lives in the lightning, uses it to travel, uses it to observe our world. And sometimes, if you look too closely, if you document too thoroughly, those things notice you looking back. And when they notice, they want to come closer. They say sound can't travel through time. But what if you heard a mine collapse happening in real time? Screams, warnings, the crushing sound of rock and timber from a disaster that killed 37 men in 1952. What would you do when you realized the voices were calling your name, begging you to warn them, even though they'd been dead for 70 years? My name is Jasper, and I'm an urban explorer and industrial historian. I document abandoned places, factories, hospitals, prisons, mining towns, preserving the visual record of locations that are slowly being reclaimed by nature or demolished for development. It's not just about the photography, though that's part of it.
Okay, changing the thingy majiggy now.
There's a noise under your bed. You check and there's nothing. But tomorrow it's louder. Paranormal M tells stories that start small and they typically end in fear. Subscribe now. Alabama, The Phantom at the Threshold. I keep dredging the attic of my memory for the weird stuff. The little supernatural postcards life occasionally mails me. I used to think there was just one. Turns out there's a bit of a handful. And the deeper I dig, the more small, uncanny moments come crawling out. We've already covered the creepy basement door and the midnight in the lab. There are two moments that refuse any tidy, rational explanation. Most of my other encounters live in the gray area, half explainable, half empty. Usually, reason wins, but not always. I'm determined to catalog them all, and this one is the freshest ink on the list. So, the climax of our thriller marathon. Lights dimmed, couch claimed. Brain slightly melted from jump scares. Perfect. Apparently, whatever follows me likes thrillers. My friend and I had spent the summer in late 2024 bringing every twisted film we could find. Hereditary, The Babadook, As Above, So Below, my ridiculous favorite. And Alien, the whole lot. We'd worked our way through a triple feature, and we were 2 hours past midnight by the time we queued the last one. It was the kind of late where the house feels like a different organism. A little background. I'd recently moved into an old craftsman built in the 1920s. The kind of place with a personality and a long history of settling in. It only has the one main entrance, and that door is theatrical. It groans and it sighs, announces visitors like an offended usher. No doorbell, the door does the announcing itself. And somewhere in the movie's second act, I got that prickly feeling. You know, the one where the hair is raised and you're sure something is watching the back of your neck. It came on slow and then loud. I checked the room a couple of times and I saw nothing. I told myself to get lost in the film, but the sensation, it clung like a bad subplot. And just when I'd almost let go of it, relief washing over me like the film's inevitable reveal, we heard the screen door and the little enclosed porch creak open. It was pretty loud. It was pretty metallic, and then a weird, patient pause before the wooden door beyond it eased open about a foot and stopped. We both sat frozen with every hair locked into tension, and my brain ran through the plausibles. Roommate coming back late, maybe. Someone fumbling for keys, a delivery, practical and boring things. Except the street beyond was empty. No headlights, no keys rustling, no footsteps on the path. The porch light flickered once and held. We always double lock the door, and even when we're home, the bolt gets set. And tonight should have been no different. The front door leaning open a foot with the deadbolt still engaged. So we assumed that it was his own kind of wrong. And in that moment, my inner movie character took over. Yeah, I did the very thing horror movies teach you not to do. I got up, crossed the living room to the door. My friend had whispered something about quote-unquote white people shit. Which, fair, and I opened it carefully. There's no one, no cars in the street, no footsteps, no bags. I peered into the dim yard and the night holding its breath. The screen door, which usually snaps closed on a little spring, it had been left ajar as if somebody had nudged it from the outside and then vanished. And I shut everything, checked the bolt twice, and even tried it a third time, like that would change the physics of the moment. Maybe the handles stick sometimes, and maybe the porch light has a loose bulb. Maybe we both imagined the feeling of being watched. Hypersensitive after 3 movies and 3 hours of cinematic dread. Maybe. But the timing and the feeling that crawled up my neck right when the movie hit its last act, The screen door creaking, the main door opening a foot and stopping. That string of coincidences was too neat and it felt arranged like a director calling cut on some white people shit movie. No smashed windows, no apparitions on camera, no dramatic figure looming in the doorway. Just the quiet and the creak left us with our imaginations in the director's chair. The kind of anticlimax that sticks. Spooky, tidy, and somehow the perfect ending to a night spent courting things that don't want to be explained. So yeah, the ghost apparently had a taste for thrillers and a flair for timing. Alrighty then. The Skeptic and the Cherry Lollipop. This happened about 10 years ago. It's when my family piled into a clanky rental. We went on a summer trip to Breckenridge while I was still in high school. We weren't brave enough to stay in the famous haunted wing, but of course we signed up for the ghost tour for kicks. My dad's the kind of loud professional skeptic who still drags us on these things either to poke holes in the theatrics or to entertain the rest of us when he pretends to be terrified. Right at the start of our tour, the guide just asked us, and with perfect showmanship and timing, "Any skeptics in the group tonight?" My dad's hand went up like he was volunteering for jury duty. The guide grinned and popped a little cherry lollipop into his palm and sang, "Hold on to that. The child's spirits like candy." He gave us a smug, as-if look and we began the tour. A bit later, we're standing in the old ballroom, the kind with creaky floorboards and a chandelier that had seen better centuries. The group circled around my dad, and the guide asked him to hold the lollipop stem straight up, palm out. She did her little coaxing bit to the children, inviting them to play with the candy. And for a minute, nothing happened. The guide let us wander the dim room for a few minutes before regrouping. Felt like a typical spooky show, mild chills courtesy of the draft. Then she suggested we try again in a different room, a different corner. My sister and I flanked him, and she was whispering soft, coaxing questions. I was being my usual half-amused, half-curious self. And after about a minute, my dad said his arm felt really cold. And we all flashed our phone lights, and his forearm was goosebumps from wrist to elbow. He's not the panicky type, so when he went oddly still, we leaned in. And my sister, ever the diplomat, asked a few times, "Do you want the lollipop? Are you reaching for it?" And then the thing that made our jaws drop as the lollipop, originally standing straight up, began to tilt. Almost until it was like parallel to the floor. And it stayed there, balanced in his hand like something had suspended it with invisible threads. We all stared, and he just stared at it. "Go on, grab it," my sister said. And there was a beat of silence. And then, no kidding, the lollipop shot forward like it had been fired from a tiny cannon, straight as an arrow into the old gilded mirror across the room, smacking it dead center about 6 feet away. It didn't arc, it didn't wobble. It was a pure line drive. We were instantly a mixture of terrified and thrilled and sick with disbelief. And then we ran, giggling like maniacs down the hallway. The guide was thrilled, hugging my dad and calling him our favorite convert. Mom had wandered off to inspect a dusty stairwell and missed the whole spectacle. She was furious when we told her. To this day, my dad swears it had a normal explanation. Muscle spasm or magnets or camera trickery. Whatever allows him to sleep at night. He watched the lollipop fly and insisted later that he must have had a weird tendon kick. And somehow it launched it perfectly into the mirror. Maybe he's right, and maybe the tour has a secret string department. My sister and I prefer to keep the version where some mischievous kid from the past really, really wanted a cherry lollipop. Doors of the Hall. The first time something like this stuck in my memory, I must have been about 16. We were packing up the old apartment. Just the essentials were left there, like my mattress and the old box TV. And a mountain of boxes my mom swore we'd unpack next weekend. I decided to crash there one night, just to watch the playoff game. Same routine. Game on, a giant tub of buttery popcorn in my lap. I ate a handful, set the bowl down on the floor. And a few minutes later, it launched across the room like somebody had snatched it and tossed it. I shrugged, I picked it up and went back to the game. And at the time, I didn't know what to think about it. Maybe I just didn't want to know. In the new place, Dad installed this ridiculous, oversized lava lamp in the living room. And sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, the glow would vanish as if something walked in front of it. It happened while I was loading the dishwasher, and again when I was in the room with the PlayStation. Once, while I was sitting on the couch, I got so lightheaded Dad laid me down. Everything went white, and I heard, plain as day, "We're all around you." And I panicked, and I thought I was dying. And all I could think was, I'm way too young for this. Skip ahead 6 years, I just started seeing a girl who would later become my wife, and a few months into moving in together. We're lying in bed, sleeping, much more than anything. It's when a deep male voice breathed into my ear and said, "Leave." It felt like someone yelling right beside my head. I looked at her with my heart thudding and said, "Did you hear that?" "I heard something," she said. It was muffled. We were about a foot apart and she couldn't make out the word at all. A couple of months later, she woke me up just to drive her to her shift at 2 in the morning. Hands were trembling and said, "Something was talking to me last night," she told me. Couldn't understand it. It was like an old language. In that image, something unseen whispering right where I slept crawled under my skin. A year after that, we moved again. I jolted awake one night to a shadow looming over me. Instinct made me grab for whoever it was. The shadow took one step back and dissolved into nothing. I didn't sleep a wink after that. Another night, I'm alone with my tablet. Bedroom doors left open. And I heard footsteps start down the hall. But they began halfway down, like they appeared out of thin air. I watched the doorway, convinced someone was sneaking in. A tall, dark silhouette glided past. I ran out. I checked the other rooms. The bathroom and the spare bedroom were empty. Every door was closed, and there was nothing the figure could have gone to or anything like that. 6 years more, new house. Seemed kind of weird. It was about 11:30. She was asleep, and I was in the spare room with the door open. I was scrolling on my phone. And from my perch, I could see down the dim hallway. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw something move again. I kind of glanced, and there was nothing. Came back to my screen, and twice more I caught the same flicker. Tried to hold my gaze at the edge of my vision. 10 feet down the hall, something was crawling, low and deliberate. And then it rose up. A woman in a pale dress, circling like she'd lost her way. She bolted toward the bedroom door, and right as she lunged, I hit the light and she vanished. Sitting there, adrenaline sharp and stupid, I wasn't sure whether to laugh at myself for being spooked or to call someone. Hair on my neck was standing up and my heart felt like it wanted out of my chest. Because whatever it was, bowl swinging, lava lamp blocking, whispers in the dark, and had a way of showing up in the corners when I would least expect it. The knob that turned. I should start by saying the house I live in dates back to 1957. It belonged to my husband's great-grandparents before it became his grandmother's. There are layers of family in these walls. A few years ago, an elderly family, a friend with emphysema, stayed with us for a while. He passed away here. As far as I know, nobody else actually died inside the house. But most of my husband's relatives are gone now, so the place carries its share of quiet. And I often get the prickly feeling that someone is watching me. And every so often, something flickers at the edge of my vision, and then vanishes when I turn to look. I'm a skeptic at heart, the kind who wants the paranormal to be true but needs real proof. So far, I haven't had anything traumatic enough to make me toss any doubts out the window. Tonight, I was in my bedroom. I was half listening to music and playing a game on my phone, and I usually close my door, and my dog sleeps in there with me. If she isn't in the room, it's only a matter of minutes before she's pawing at the door frame, waiting to be let back in. And that's what she did tonight. But I was caught up on my phone and didn't open it immediately. While I'm staring at my screen, I heard the doorknob rattle, like someone turning it. Then the door swung inward, and I glanced up, and I saw my daughter just slipping into the laundry room right next to my room. I assumed she'd passed through and left the door ajar. When she came back out, I casually asked her if she'd let the dog in, and she said no. My daughter's in wonder why about something that small. My husband was in the garage tinkering with the mower, and his grandmother was dozing in the living room. At first, I blamed the dog, thinking she'd nudged the door open. But the knob hadn't just creaked, it rattled. The exact noise you get when someone turns it. I tried to recreate it myself, pushing the door this way and that. Couldn't make the knob clatter without actually turning it. When I mentioned it to my husband later, he told me his grandmother had experienced something odd a few nights before. She reached for a glass on her bedside table. But a few minutes later, the glass was on the floor beside the bed, as if it had slid itself there. She hadn't seen anyone near her room, and she'd swore that she hadn't moved it. And I don't know what to make of it. Maybe there's a simple explanation. Old houses said old dog noses are stronger than I think. But the sound of a knob turning itself is a small, insistent thing. It hangs in my head like a question with no answer. The Night Walking Rabbit. I've had my share of what I'd call creepy stuff. Sleep paralysis, the prickling feeling. The one like someone's watching.
I'll have this done by tomorrow. No shit. Like, legit. I'll have this damn thing done by tomorrow. It's looking good, though. Got a little more to go on the face. Got a lot of the scales done, a lot of the tree done. All I lack is 2 colors. It is almost finito. I love you guys. Thank you for the $5. Who's ever sent the $5? You all have a good night. Happy Halloween.